everyone. Welcome to Her Reigning Journey podcast, where our unique stories are realized, understood, and results in us living out our purpose with strength and dignity. On today's episode, we'll be discussing what it means to be our worst critic and how we can overcome such. I'm joined today by the lovely Shameda Weekes. She was born and raised on the beautiful island of St. Martin, currently holding a bachelor's degree in international communication management, a master's in adult learning and global change, certifications in laughter therapy, life coaching, and art therapy. In addition, she's the proud owner of Happy Me Empowerment Services. Be enriched, be encouraged, be empowered by this story. I am your host, Catherina. One of the phrases that we often hear from time to time, whether we are growing up or with our colleagues and so forth, we often hear individuals said that they are their worst critique. And in your opinion, what does that mean to you?
Okay, so being my own worst critic is basically finding every flaw you could possibly imagine on yourself, real or made up, because half the time you pick up on things and you would show people or tell people and they will watch you like, what are you talking about? Like, that not even there, that don't even exist. But you are so hard on yourself, you know, and basically it brings with it not nice feelings. So being your own worst critic is exactly how it sounds. You're criticizing yourself more than anybody else around you.
I agree. And I think something that you mentioned in terms of others is that you tend to be so much more harder on yourself than others. You know, that is something that always baffles me, because I'm sure that we're not the only individuals who have heard it before, but I'm sure that other individuals too that have heard it, they're wondering, why is that? Like, why is it that you are so much more harder on others than your own self?
For me, I think it has to do with childhood encounters. Like in my specific situation, I was a heavy kid or a fat child growing up, or fatter than the other smaller students, and you know, being slender was a mark of beauty. You know, it's only in my teenage years and in adulthood, having different friends, I have more slender friends that explain that they experience the same thing, but from being smaller in size. Being told you're heavy, you know, even by like family members, meaning well, of course, you know, but still would tell you things that's pretty hurtful. So you hold that inside of you, and that's how you identify yourself. Or even like mean people in primary school. I love to sing. I love to sing out loud. You know, it was just soothing for me. And sometimes a classmate would be like, Shameda, shut up. You know, and she was a little bully in and of herself, you know, the smallest person in the class. But nonetheless, these things stay with you that today, I mean, I sing or I would sing karaoke, but you still have that little inside feeling from those things you encounter in your past. So, you know, growing up, you let it in. That's why you have to be so careful what you put into younger people.
Correct.
You know, you're not in a position, you don't have the knowledge, you know, hey, God knows what's going on with that person, don't take it in, is not necessarily the truth. Correct. So I believe that those encounters is what caused you to become your own worst critic.
I agree. I definitely agree with you. And in addition to that, are there other instances besides your childhood experiences that may also contribute to someone else being their worst critic?
For me, I experienced something, for example, where I were very close friends to some persons, and they basically, or one of them then, basically was the reason for a close family member's broken home.
Okay.
And I blame myself for that a lot, because it's like, if you had identified the type of character they had, or, you know, you criticize yourself, you should have been a better judge of character. You shouldn't have allowed them in. Otherwise, they wouldn't have met this family member, and then that wouldn't have happened to cause so much of pain.
Correct.
You know, you blame yourself and you wonder, how could this person be so heartless? You know, and these stories are a dime a dozen. It happens all the time, but still, you are in the position that internally you are beating yourself up because you caused it, so to speak. You are taking responsibility for somebody else's actions.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. And that is something I think that many of us struggle with, that internal battling that happens so much. And I think it's how we tend to perceive ourselves sometimes that leads us to that point of, okay, well, I should have done this, I should have done that. And it's
If
like,
you didn't do this,
if you didn't do
that.
exactly, it
Yeah.
goes both ways, not realizing that in the bigger picture and spectrum of things, that is not always necessarily the case,
It's all perception, huh? You
Exactly.
criticize yourself all based on perception.
Perception.
Yeah.
I agree. I definitely agree with you. And perception, something I heard about perception, and I often ask myself if that is really and truly something that is true. Perception is reality. Like, that is something I hear time and time again. Perception is reality.
I dare to say there's some truth to that, because your perception of things is your reality, and everyone is living in their own reality. The only reason certain things are a collective reality, so to speak, is because we have come to a consensus of it as a society. So I laugh, but I still dare to say that rings some truth.
Some truth.
Yeah.
I agree. I definitely agree, because we all have different backgrounds. We all have different things that shape our thinking, that our experiences that tend to shape who we are as individuals. And of course, as you mentioned, that tends to become our reality. So sometimes it's a hard struggle when other people on the outside tries to tell you different, and it's like, well, actually, I feel a different type of way about that, because that is not what you are accustomed to or knowing. And in terms of individuals that may be their worst self-critique, I think sometimes they might not even self-realize it. They might not know it. How can they identify or say, you know what? I really and truly think I need to take a pause because I am being too hard critically reviewing myself. Like, what signs can help someone see that they're in that denial?
For me, it's different encounters. That the very last encounter that I experienced, me personally, is what showed it. I can't give a specific situation. I think everyone's journey is different, and it's kind of like that. The light switch goes on, like, no, this is too much,
Yeah.
So I used to at one point call myself cynical. I used to say, oh, I don't like people. I can't specify exactly when, but I would never say that today because of my life experiences, and I understand the power of the mind, my beliefs, my perception, as we already mentioned. I think to myself, how could I have even said that then? But I was so confident and strong in that feeling and in that belief at that given time, because human beings, especially after that situation where, someone who you love got hurt, human beings do messed up things. I don't like humans. I don't like people. And it's kind of like you're saying you don't like yourself, but you when you say you don't register that. So you kind of already in that feeling and in that statement criticizing yourself. So
Sure.
I think it's a matter of realizing when you're not being very nice to yourself and others, regardless of, their actions, so to speak. Don't hate the sinner, hate the sin.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that is so true. And it's like prematurely concluding thoughts about yourself that is not really the case. So for example, if someone says, hey, Shameda, I really think that, you can do this, etc. And the first thing you turn and you tell yourself is, me? No, don't you see that I'm probably too small for that? I don't have enough knowledge on this. And then is where it's like, wait, but you're being a little bit too hard on yourself, because this person on the outside, they can see more than you are actually seeing for yourself.
And on the flip side, for example, I recently shared on Facebook where this pretty heavy girl, she's a dancer and a professional dancer. She does a really, really good job and is really inspirational. But could you imagine how many people have told her you can't dance or you should stop? And if she had listened to them today, she wouldn't be doing it. So it's like really finding that inner voice and that inner warrior, so to speak, to say, you know, no matter people's opinion, because as we said, opinions are shaped by your childhood and so many different things.
Yeah.
Who's to say your opinion is the right one?
Exactly.
You know, so
exactly.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, you know, channeling that inner voice, that inner thoughts. I think that really plays a huge role. Something that I also heard before was that your thoughts become your actions become your habits,
Yep.
and your habits become your character. It's so important that, you know, our thoughts, we first and foremost develop those positive thoughts, counter those negative thoughts that tend to come in our mind with positive thoughts. The other thing that you mentioned a while ago, you mentioned when you were younger, looking at yourself and struggling with the fact that you were a bit overweight. Like, how did you overcome that aspect? Like, what was your journey going through that?
To be
that part?
honest, you know, I was heavy, but I always felt like, you know, even though I'm heavy, I'm fabulous. You know, you would already start telling yourself things. I would wear my tight up little shirts because not only the slender ones can wear it, I could wear it too. And I didn't care, so to speak. And sometimes you would still feel a little down on yourself, or where you would notice like the boys flocking quicker to the more slender ones than you. Not to say they wouldn't be attracted to you, but then when they are, it's like, are you really attracted to me, or you know, you just want what boys want? You know, speaking as if you're back in the day. But
Exactly.
I always had a sense of value for myself. I don't know where I got that from. Most likely my mother, God rest her and bless her. That, you know, even though you may not feel like you look the best now, you're still worthy. You're still valuable. And she never expressly told me that. I just got that sense from her. So yeah, that is what would sustain me. That is what would make me feel like, hey, I'm still worthy, even though sometimes internally you would criticize yourself for feeling a little down. You know, I wouldn't do it out. I wouldn't say, oh gosh, I so fat this, and I know, so you'd watch me and believe I was walking skinny. That's probably was the outside world talking about me, you know, but inside you would be a little down on yourself, you know, if only you were a little bit more slender. And at a given point, I had lost quite a bit of weight. I started dancing, and I lost weight. That was about 17. But you see, when you psychologically are still in that fat frame of mind, for lack of better words, you still feel heavy. You still feel overweight. Today, I look back on pictures of myself, and I'm like, babe, I totally had body dysmorphia. Impossible. You know? So it's like, it's a matter of loving yourself, and I had to learn too, and that is my what I learned from that situation, in that critique situation of overweight, to love myself no matter what, value myself no matter what. So you gain weight, you lose weight, you figure it out. You take care of yourself, you make yourself look nice. You don't have to be a specific size to look good and feel good. Yes, okay, if you shed a few pounds, you would feel better. You'd probably be healthier, you know, but at the end of the day, you take care of yourself and you value yourself as is, because if you don't, you can lose all the pounds in the world, and I'm a testimony to that. I'm telling you, you will still feel like you're overweight. But if you love yourself regardless of your size, when you do lose a pound, you may actually see it and say, hey, shed a few pounds, man. So yeah,
no, I concur with you, and I think just to piggyback on what you mentioned, the opposite also holds true. Like, I know you also started to mention it in the beginning as well, but the slender girls, I'm a slender girl, so I'm gonna tell you, you struggle sometimes with critiquing yourself, and my family, they know it. And sometimes I look at myself and I'm like, man, I'm so small for this. Like, I don't want this angle of the camera to catch me. And I know this probably is the first time that I would mention some of these things, but you know, you kind of see yourself like, oh my God, I don't want to wear this. I don't like how this looks. Or don't catch me on that side. Don't do this and that. But then it comes back to the point of realizing, well, no, I am worthy. I am valuable. I am here because I have purpose. There's a reason why my physique is like this at this present point in time. it could either be probably to help my fellow comrades, or it could actually be something for myself along my life's journey where I could look back and say, hey, when I was at this size, I was able to, extend my leg, XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as I probably start to hit my 40s or whatever, and I started to really like put on the weight, like, I can't do that anymore. But back at that present point in time, the physique of my body allowed me to, do something to that extent. So it holds true. It's like, accepting, well, here I am today. I know what's most important, as you mentioned, is, maintaining that healthy balance of your body, but knowing I love myself.
No matter what.
No matter what. You love yourself no matter what. And I know something that you also touched on before was, blaming yourself for other people's actions, like taking the responsibility for that. Like, how did you overcome that part?
First and foremost, I had to forgive and decide that, something, I didn't do wrong by the person who got hurt. It wasn't me.
Yeah.
I can't be responsible for other people's actions. And karma is real. So what goes around comes around. You do unto others. Golden rule. We all learned it in, I think, kindergarten.
Exactly.
So, and God will deal with the situation. So that's how I've dealt with a lot of situations where it's sort of out of your control and you find yourself sort of feeling responsible or wanting to shift or be in control. Something, no. God is in control. Let it go. So for me, dealing with that situation is simply, something, I cannot be responsible for other people's actions. I can only be responsible for me.
Exactly.
So that's how I dealt with that particular situation.
That one. And perfectionism. Like, perfectionism, that is something I think so many people, I don't want to say suffer with, but so many people deal with, like, the idea of perfectionism.
How I rolled into perfectionism. I passed for HAVO. Got introduced to a lot of different subjects, so it was a bit much for me. And you're feeling yourself, you're young, you're going to parties, whatnot. And I dropped to MAVO 2. So I'm like, okay, in MAVO 2, I'm like, okay, I could do this as a breeze. Well, MAVO 2, I stay back. That was that. Now, talk about your own critique. I in tears bawling. And my father, it's okay. Most parents would be like on the children, but my father, he's very loving, It's okay. That day, I made the decision, never again. Pass MAVO 2, pass MAVO 3, did MAVO 4, when HAVO 4 get best of the class, when HAVO 5, and somewhere in between there, in between that shift, I started to become a perfectionist. Yes. So I went to the Netherlands and I did excellence in school, First year, pass it well. Second year, pass it well. When I reached my last year and I had to write this thesis, my perfectionism that got me so far with all my high grades was now working against me because I didn't feel like I got enough information on how to do it. I started to perceive it as this undoable document that was just so complicated. So I couldn't actually bring myself to finish the document. What my very, very good friend did that caused me to finish that document, believe it, and I'm telling you, bad, like on a negative spiral, bad, like I'm never going to finish school. That's when I really understood the power of negative thoughts.
Yes.
And that's where I got introduced to positive thoughts. Because when I'm supposed to be working on my thesis, I research anything, I come across the secret movie, all kind of things, I need to know remedy what's going on with me because I in this negative spiral loop. So finally, my best friend, she told me, who I call my wife, she told me, you know what you're going to do? I'm like, yeah, I'm listening attentively, because if you're talking about my thesis at that time, don't talk to me, So I'm listening. And she's like, what you're going to do is, you're going to do it. And you're going to fail. I said, I'm going to fail? She said, yeah, because when you fail, they're going to tell you exactly what you got to fix, and then you'll pass, because you're capable, man. So I'm like, okay. So she totally reversed psychology me, and I know she was doing it, but I needed it at the time. Start to fix this document now. When we nearing the end, she starts switching, she threw on me. You gonna pass it, wifey? I said, I'm gonna pass. I'm like, no, that way, tell me I'm gonna fail. You tell me I'm gonna fail. Went in, to be honest, I don't even remember what happened in that presentation, but I passed with an 80 for the company I worked with, which was Dutchversity at the time, the only partner company of the Martin Luther King Center, I believe located in Atlanta. I got an opportunity to work with them.
Nice.
And do my thesis, and I passed, and that was just an experience. That showed me how perfectionism could work completely against you, and that's where I decided, I do not need to be perfect. Trying my best, continuing to grow, continuing to develop is sufficient.
I agree.
That is what happened when it comes to that. And then funny enough, as we were talking before we started, I recently completed my master's in adult learning and global change. Awesome. I came across a program that allowed me to do it as a European Union citizen, free of charge. And I started that program in 2012.
Okay.
2012. It was supposed to end in 2015. I lost my mother-in-law in 2014. So I took a study break. I picked back up where I left off in 2016. I was supposed to do my thesis in 2017.
Yeah.
Because of the trauma, for lack of a better word, but still deciding that I'm not going to give up, I'm going to do it. I just, in August, completed my master's in adult learning and global change. So you could call that 7 years from start to beginning.
Yeah.
But technically not, because I took breaks in between. But I say that to say this, no matter what you experience, and even as a perfectionist that's no longer a perfectionist, if you choose to do something, you can accomplish it. You can accomplish whatever you want to do, no matter how hard it may seem.
Agree.
And that was my journey when it comes to perfectionism, doing it again. Because some of my friends were like, you really gonna do a thesis again? And I'm like, yes. Because I want my master's. It's what I want, so I'm going for it.
Exactly.
So it took me a bit, but it's complete.
It's progression. That is the thing. It's progression. I think sometimes when it comes to the whole perfectionism thing, it's like we want to get it done correctly at this time, at this point in time, but not realizing that it's more so about progression.
Yeah.
It's more so about learning.
Yeah.
It's more so about growing.
Because if you watch sometimes the most famous people, they don't do things perfect and they're making millions.
Exactly. So
but we are here beating up ourselves to make sure it's done exactly like this, when really that type of stress, I for sure don't ever want to feel it again. So I am no longer self-proclaimed perfectionism. I'm just me.
I love it. I love it. And you tend to enjoy life more, what it has to offer. Because I think sometimes when we see perfectionism taking place, it kind of puts you so much into this little box or square. It's like, okay, this is it. This has to be right. This has to be it. Not realizing if you kind of let yourself live, it's where you're going to see, well, no, there's another way that this could have been done. This probably is a little bit more exciting. Along that journey, the things that you learn, it helps to shape you and make you into a better person. The mistakes along the way, it teaches you certain things for the next moment in time as well.
In my case, being a perfectionism made me criticize myself so much to the point that I couldn't even create the document. Which, if I didn't create it, there would be nothing to submit. But nothing that I did was good enough, to a point that it made me stagnant. I couldn't move.
Exactly. And it also tends to hurt others as well. Let's say, for example, others that are working with us, they feel perhaps, well, you know what, I can't do this right. It's never going to be done right because of the one that they are, working alongside. And it also tends to stunt their growth too as well, and their whole learning process. And then they don't want to do this no more. They don't want to do anything no more. And then they start to have these negative thoughts.
Discouraging.
It is
without
discouraging.
you even realizing,
Exactly. And it's like, we have to be so conscious about really and truly choosing to enjoy this journey called life.
Yeah.
And you know, one of the questions that came to mind was, is it always something negative when your worst critique, or is there positive upsides to it as well?
For me, words are very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So the word critique for me
Mm-hmm.
does not sit well with me.
Correct.
I prefer to be my best feedback giver, so to speak.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So you reflect.
Nice.
The word critique for me does not come with a positive
connotation.
Yes,
Yeah.
precisely. So give yourself feedback, reflect, really
Mm-hmm.
be open to the truth that is downloaded in your spirit, whether you do something about it or not.
Mm-hmm.
It's your life to live. But for me, reflection is very important, and be uplifting. Why you gotta criticize yourself? So
I agree.
for me, it doesn't work for me, but maybe others, like, if you hit me in the gym, don't be yelling at me to get things done. I mean, you could do it. You yell at me and walking through the door because I don't want to do this for you. That's why discourage the end. The put it's over. So that's what pushes me.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone is different. Everyone has to reflect, analyze, and know what works for them. So maybe some people like the word critique. Maybe it gets them going.
I agree. And you mentioned something a while ago about self-reflection. And I love the fact that you chose that word as well. Self-reflection. It makes it sounds a little less harsh than the word critique. And when you mentioned that, the first thing that came to my mind was that, when you're self-reflecting, instead of you saying, well, hey, I'm a bad person, like, this thing whatever I did made me a bad person. It's actually not you being a bad person, but more so, well, hey, you know what? That decision you made
That was a poor choice.
And I think when we're reflecting on our own selves, it is so important to really and truly know what it is that we're telling ourselves. Because as you said, words have power. Words have power. Whatever you speak over you, whatever you speak into you, who you allow to speak into you as well, they carry weight. They carry power. And that is the big difference, is identifying, well, hey, this decision or this choice I made wasn't really a right choice, but it doesn't make me a bad person.
No.
Because once I'm still living and breathing and still here, there's a reason why I'm still here.
And you can make a better choice.
Exactly. You can make a better choice. Like, that happens so that you can learn. You can also help someone else learn along the way to be better as they go along this journey. And one thing I also thought of too as well was, some people might say, well, you know what? Me being my worst or my best critique of myself is not such a bad thing because it pushes me to grow. But then there are other extremes of it being, not really. Like, how far is too far?
Well, as you heard from my story, if it's stopping you from completing your entire study that you have a student loan for, you are abroad, if it's stopping you from completing a very, very big part of your life, then you sort of got to let it go.
I agree.
Because at the end of the day, the document probably wasn't perfect, but I passed. I have my degree today. I can stand, and as my parents would always tell me, once you have your diploma, nobody can take that away from you.
True.
I'm sure everybody parents tell them that. So if you find yourself judging yourself, in turn judging others, because a lot of the time how we treat ourselves, we tend to treat others.
That is key. Yep.
So if you find yourself constantly finding a problem with Johnny, a problem with Susie, a problem with Sally, maybe you should, nothing you do is good enough, and it's hindering your relationships. Because relationships are so important.
Yes.
As I said earlier, I would say I don't like people. Or I will used to say I'm a cynic. I'm cynical. Not long ago, a couple of years ago, I saw a research done by Harvard where they monitored these people for 70 years to see really what brought them happiness. And one of the top things were our relationships. People tend to downplay relationships like, oh, I don't need friends or dying cool. But the people in our lives, whether we like it or not, is what helps us to live longer and happier lives. So you can't go around deliberately destroying relationships without even thinking twice about it, because guess what? You're busy destroying yourself. So, yeah, I would say it's a little extreme if you realize that you are being blocked from progressing with something very, very important, or if you are hindering loving, caring, and fruitful relationships in your life.
I definitely agree with you 100%. Sometimes it's those unrealistic expectations that we set for ourselves.
Always critiquing, my goodness. You don't have to tell somebody, but you need to lose weight. And oh my goodness, in the Caribbean, I don't know if it's only St. Martin, but in the Caribbean, people, and they have memes on it, people believe greeting you with, you get fatter.
Thank you.
Is a thing, or like something that is normal. You make people feel bad. Yeah. People have emotions. It's not cute. Don't do it.
Yeah. No, it's true. And sometimes you really don't know what the person is battling at that point in time, which would lead them either to be a little bit heavier or be a little bit smaller. There are traumas.
Or if they are fighting something medical.
Exactly.
I've encountered that so many times that I started to come up with comebacks in my head. I swear people just stop doing it because they probably know what's going to come to them. And I experience it where, for example, people themselves have lost weight. So maybe they're feeling good about themselves. Yeah. But then now because you feel good about yourself means you should project what you don't feel good about on me.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? I'm happy with me. Allow me to be happy with me. And when you get, you come out, you feel yourself, and then people tell you, you get fatter. It's like, hi to you too.
Exactly. No, it's true.
It is so true. Yeah, I had another lady. Oh, you put on weight. I say, you don't like yourself, huh? Just like that, because you tell you I got comebacks. You don't tell people these things.
No, I agree.
You don't. If anything is taken away from what I am saying today, please don't greet anybody with your fat, your skinny. Don't tell them anything about your appearance. Just let them be.
I agree. No, I concur. Especially in the age and times that we are living in, where it seems like the pressures of life are really caving in on people, and sometimes you cannot think of what they are going through. And unless you actually have a conversation with them, is when you realize, well, hey, this person is battling X, Y, Z, and the whole alphabet.
Yeah.
And you just spring up and you say something that is so inappropriate. You don't know how much it crushes their spirit. They probably at that point in time may have just gotten the energy, the first day out, the first day seeing someone. And then when you come with these heavy, negative, critical words, it sets them back and it hinders them from, moving forward. And we're supposed to be our brother's keeper.
True.
Like, we're supposed to be there for each other. But when we do these things, we more destroy each other, break each other down than lift each other up.
Yeah.
And I so like your happy bee empowerment. I have to put it in there, seeing all these encouraging words that you say. And, I also have my peers as well. When I would see them actually repost it, on their little WhatsApp statuses and so forth, I'm like, it's helping people. Just the matter of it being positive words, it helps someone. It gets them through the day.
Yeah.
It definitely
Our
gets
words
them
are so important.
They are.
Even the affirmations, I am affirmations, where you affirm to yourself the things you want to believe about yourself. Because you've been told so much stuff all your life. I don't think there's one human being that went through life only hearing wonderful, beautiful things about themselves. Whether you're too tall, whether you're too short, whether you're too fat, whether you're too skinny, whether you can't do this, whether you're a dummy. People, and it's a cycle.
Yes, it's a cycle.
You show me one person and never hear anything negative growing up, and I give them a round of applause because you are really sheltered from this world. Really.
I think there will be a 0.something percentage of that actually taking place and happening.
Yeah. And then they would still probably be criticized, like, but you weren't exposed to nothing. You don't.
Exactly. No matter how you turn it, something critical will come out from it, no matter how you turn it. And I really and truly like what you mentioned about the words of affirmation. What I love seeing on the internet sometimes when parents post it is when they have their kids early in the morning and they look them in the mirror and they have these words of affirmation that they set for them, or when they're going through in the car driving to school, or at home, you hear their stories, and it is so encouraging, because we definitely know that childhood experiences helps to shape your adulthood. So seeing them do this is like, oh wow, you are instilling that into their subconscious so that they know who they are and what, the value that they bring to this world. And in light of that, how can someone find balance between true self-reflection and not being too hard on themselves? Like, how could they find that balance?
Balance between self-reflection and not being too hard. Like I said, the words that you choose, you choose more positive words. I actually instill in my students, because I'm a career guidance counselor currently, I sometimes when I have conversations with them and they tell me they're worried, I ask them what they're worried about. I have them explain. Then I let them know, like a broken record, worry helps nothing. You are only giving yourself bad feelings about something that is to come, that hasn't even happened yet. And most of the time, the things we worry about, doesn't it always work out in the end anyway? Exactly. And they're like, yes, miss. I'm like, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to eliminate the word worry completely out of our vocabulary. We could say we're a little concerned. And you could already sense them, even though these are Zoom meetings, so you don't have that physical sense, you could sense them feeling lighter. So you find that balance between learning and choosing better words. Learning to choose words that are more uplifting rather than bringing you down. I'm a little uplifted instead of I'm so angry, or I'm a little, perturbed. Or you find words that are less heavy. Because you're creating an atmosphere with words. Words either build or they break. You need to determine what it is you want to do with yourself.
No, I agree. And it's like something that you mentioned earlier too as well, in terms of you coming to that point and realizing, well, you want to make that turn at that specific point in time. I think just to add to what you were saying is that we need to give ourselves some amount of grace, like especially when it came to the perfectionism part of it. It's like, being able to extend grace to yourself. Something I realized with us as humans, correct me if I'm wrong, I could be wrong, is that when it comes to others, sometimes we tend to have more compassion towards them. We tend to be more gracious to them. We tend to be more understanding to them. But when it comes to ourselves, man, it's like, nope, I'm having no compassion on myself. You gotta do this, you gotta get it done, you gotta get this right. And it's like, no, you first gotta love yourself, know yourself, extend yourself that same grace, because you actually deserve it.
Yep. That was definitely me in the past. Like I said, that switch went up, down, whichever one you want to say. And now I truly believe in, self-care. A statement that I like a lot, and I got it from a former colleague, is you can't give from an empty cup. And prior to that, you would feel selfish when you take care of yourself, or you take time to read an empowering book, or you take time to even do something nice for yourself, because you're supposed to be doing this and you're supposed to be doing that. But at the end of the day, or you're supposed to be taking care of somebody. But at the end of the day, if you, I guess it's a form of reverse psychology there again, if you are okay with understanding with, hey, yes, you want to give, but you can't give anything if you're empty, then you're like, okay, so self-care is a very important part of me actually ultimately giving. If you are not at ease, if you are not at a point where you feel good, how then are you going to help anyone? You won't be productive with anything that you do.
I agree.
So self-care, making sure my cup is full, is something that I hold in the back of my mind and I practice regularly.
Awesome. So what are some of your self-care, Reg, I know you probably mentioned reading a book before, but what other things
Reading a book, listening to my affirmations
Mhm.
in the morning, sometimes just taking a pause, some me time, watching, binging on Netflix. Sometimes people say, oh, like it's such a terrible thing.
Yeah.
But if I am enjoying it, if I feel elated, what is so wrong with it? I'm not doing it for 24 hours a day and doing nothing at all. This is my me time.
Correct.
I don't watch the news because when I was researching back when, how are some ways to stay positive? The first thing that popped up was don't watch the news. And indeed, the news is so full of things that you can't control, negativity sells. So people are like, well, how you will know what happening? Well, I think if it's very important, you'll know.
I love when you said that.
Facebook will pop up. Somebody will come. You hear about this, you hear about that. So why should I take in all that negativity when I just know it doesn't work for me?
Correct.
So all of these things are a part of my self-care routine and lifestyle, I would say. Because it's not just, one-off things, but, and it look good, feel good. If I'm like, something when Corona was going on, nails was not done, but I'm like, something, I want to do my nails. You feel good. You want to look down in your hand and say, hey, my nails are done.
Correct.
So it's these little things, whatever pulls on your spirit in a moment and brings you joy, and it's like, you're worth it. Why not?
I agree. No. I definitely agree. And I know something that we touched on before is, the criticism that we get from others. I think that it's so important that we be mindful of our environment of people that we keep around us as well.
Oh yeah, so true.
Yeah, like it's so important that we have people that would speak those positive words into us and not words that would tend to derail us. Because sometimes you don't even self-realize that you're in this cycle, as you mentioned before, like a cycle of where you hearing these negative words becomes normal. It becomes okay. And then you feel like, okay, this is life. And then you ended up projecting that onto others, not realizing that that is not really the case. But it goes way back and it stems from, who do you allow to speak those type of criticism or criticizing words into your life?
Yeah.
And, one question I would ask you is how can, let's say, for example, if you're a child, you can't really decide, well, hey, this is the person I'm gonna hang with or not. But as you start to mature, you start to become teenagers or adults. Like, how can people be able to identify and know exactly who they would accept criticism from besides their parents? Like, who could they accept it from? How could they identify someone that is, really and truly for them?
Boy, Oprah Winfrey said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. It'll save you a lot of hurt. People tend to show who they are with their actions. And if, I don't need to specify actions that hurt, but if you choose not to ignore the action because they're your friend. Example, your friend does go by Sally and take up Sally $20. Go by Johnny, take up Johnny $20. Don't believe your friend at some point ain't gonna take from you. You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
Believe the character, believe them the first time. Don't make excuses for them. And I think as young people, relationships are so important. Friendships are so important. You tend to come up with excuses for your friends.
Yeah.
So that is what I would advise for young people, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. And if you see patterns of jealousy or your friends ain't telling you nothing good about you, or your feelings are there to guide you, So if you feel like you're being used, or anything that feels not correct in your spirit, don't ignore it.
True.
Don't ignore it. That's what I would say.
I love that you mentioned that. It's that inner voice, that inner pulling. Some people might say it's intuition. Others would say it's the Holy Spirit. It's guiding and it's leading you, and it's there for a reason. And I love how you said don't ignore it, because sometimes we get that feeling, that gut feeling, and we try to tell ourselves other things to derail us from going with that flow. But it is so true that we pay attention to those inner workings that tend to tell us, hey, be careful, this is a little red flag.
Listen, I think human beings are the best excuse makers ever when they want to be. Let me tell you, the excuses can go on and on when they want excuses, but at the end of the day, it would just save you a lot of hurt if you're honest with yourself, no matter how much you care about a person.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you have to cut off people completely. You just have to be aware of people's weaknesses.
Yes.
Because everybody has a weakness.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
I know.
So somebody's weakness might be, you tell somebody your weakness, but their weakness might be not being able to hold secrets. So you just have to be aware of the people who are around you, and
I agree.
Choose them wisely, keep those close, and then even then people mess up, people make mistakes.
It's true.
It
is true.
So
it is so true. So I know this has been such a fun afternoon. It has been so good just chit-chatting with you and touching on these topics that is so needed for us to understand, some of the symptoms and behaviors that we see with people, there's a root cause, and sometimes we don't realize what the root cause may be, but we do believe that addressing those root causes, it's gonna help for the long term. Sometimes we tend to just snip the symptoms, but not realizing that, hey, if we want to be better and we want to address the why, it's getting to the root. And those words that we speak over ourselves, those are roots that we are digging, So it's being so mindful and the self-reflection and coming to the point of where, hey, I have to stop, I have to turn this around. Let me come to it. So before we leave today, I will ask you, what is some quotes or encouraging words that you want to leave with everyone today?
What I would like to say is what's listed on my beautiful bag that I was given as a gift. Rather than criticizing yourself, be bold or italic, but never regular. Love yourself for who you are, regardless of what anybody has to say. You are important, you are valued, and you are loved because you choose to love you.
All right. Thank you so much for those words, and thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. We hope that you're encouraged and inspired to do what it takes to ensure that you reign on your journey. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, be blessed.